Garden work clears the mind, and for me, this is true. Whenever I spend time doing some work in a garden, I do feel a little bit more relaxed afterwards. During fall last year, I applied a layer of brown leaves on top of this bed. Now that the season's about to begin, the first thing I'm doing is adding a layer of finished compost on top. There's no need to dig by continuing to add a layer of organic materials. I'm continuously rejuvenating the health of our garden soil. The same process is done on the vertical planter wall. This season, I'm thinking of planting all dwarf tomatoes along the wall. Last season, I planted a couple of dwarf tomatoes and they did really well in such a small space. And I can't wait to see how this all turns out when it's all filled with plants. This bed turned out to be really functional. I was able to use the vertical space along the wall and also by adding a trellis for climbing vines. Every year I'm rotating crops, so each season it always looks different. I like that it turned out to be a multifunctional bed, and I've been able to grow all types of vegetables so far. The first seed I'm going to plant in this bed is spinach. Spinach do well when you plant them directly in ground in early spring. They grow really fast, which makes them ideal for crop rotations. So by the time I'm ready to transplant my summer crops, I'll be harvesting spinach. And sometimes the best tool is what's around you. So I'm using a stick to make a straight line, and I'll use this as a guide. I'm planting the seeds in rows closer than usual to maximize my space. Normally, the rows should be 12 to 18 inch apart, but I find that between 6 to 8 inch apart still works. Seeds should be planted half an inch deep and about an inch apart. When it comes to sowing seeds directly, you want to have consistent watering for a couple of days. This will give you the best germination rate. Also, when you're planting in early spring, be proactive and check the weather for frost warnings. You can use a plastic cover on extremely cold nights, but for the most part, spinach is very cold hardy. We even planted a few seeds late fall under a covered bed, and they're a lot bigger now and are almost ready to be harvested. Garlic usually takes about 8 to 9 months from the time you plant and ground up until you harvest, which is why in colder climate we plant garlic around October and November. But as a part of an experiment, I'm planting garlic in April. This should give me enough time to harvest by November. I separate each clove and only plant the larger ones. I then plant this about 4 to 5 inch deep, and unlike fall garlic planting, the cloves won't go dormant. They should sprout above ground within 1 to 2 weeks. At the same time, I'm doubling up on this space to plant radish. Radish is also great to sow directly in ground in early spring. Certain varieties only take about 30 days from seed to harvest. So while garlic is growing underground, radish is growing on top. So hopefully all goes well with this experiment so I can continue doing the same thing every year. Another reason why you want to plant garlic in spring is to use them as a companion plant. Garlic will deter aphids, whiteflies, Japanese beetles, and other pests. Another plant you can start growing in early spring is onion. You can either grow onions from sets or start them from seeds. I'm growing from sets because they do get a faster head start. Onion is also a great companion plant, which is why I usually plant them all over the place. Not only can they deter pests, but they can also improve the flavor of the plants that surround them. Onions can be planted near herbs, carrots, dill, strawberries, and tomatoes. We had several days of rain, and during this time, a robin built a nest on our vertical garden wall. As much as I can, I try not to disturb her when I'm out in the garden, but she always flies off. So I decided to take a peek at her eggs, and they're absolutely amazing. This is old school, but still an economical way to build a trellis. To start, I'm installing several eye hooks to an existing center post on a garden bed. Each hook will be about 8 to 9 inch apart, and I'm using a stick as a guide to keep it all even. To tighten the hooks faster, I'm using an Allen key and inserting it into a drill. Try to do this on the lowest setting because setting it at a high speed can make the hooks fly out. This is a good hack if you have several hooks to install. I'm repeating the same steps on the top post. Once all the hooks are set, it's time to install the twine. You can use natural jute, but I went with 100% cotton butcher's twine, which is also natural. It's a personal preference for me, I just find it a lot stronger. I wanted to build something quick and easy, which is why I went with the twine. The step is simple, all you have to do is run several horizontal lines first. Pull it as tight as possible and tie a knot. Once the horizontal lines are completed, it's time to work on the vertical set. When you're cutting the vertical lines at the very bottom, make sure you leave enough extra. And all that's left to do is run the vertical lines under and over each horizontal twine. And when you get to the very bottom, tie a knot and tighten in place. Now that the string trellis is set, it's time to plant peas. I'm planting peas as the first crop because it's fast growing and it can handle cool spring weather. Time to grab my multi-tool, and I'm using this to dig a trench about 2 to 3 inch deep. I'm spacing each seed about 1 to 3 inch apart, and peas don't really mind if they're close together. As the peas sprout, they'll start to grow and eventually reach for the strings. If you have a lot of birds in your garden, protect them with a netting or a mesh until they reach the first string. As a final advice, try not to rush through your project in a single day. Take your time and enjoy the process, and if you have to spend a few hours in a garden a day to finish one project at a time, that would be the best thing to do.